Busy first 9 days, so joining me now is President Trump's Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. Mr. Priebus, welcome back to the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chuck.
I want to start with timing on the executive order and the sense of urgency in trying to implement it immediately. Was there any thought given of creating a 72-hour grace period, a 1-week grace period, in order to allow Border Patrol agents to understand what the rules are, allow agencies in the federal government to understand what the rules are? It seems that a lot of the chaos yesterday could have been avoided had you at least included some sort of timed grace period. Why was that not included?
Well, I don't think you want to have a grace period, Chuck, because then people that want to do bad things to Americans would just move up their travel date 2 days in order to get into the country before the grace period's over. So I think it's one of these things that and if you ask a lot of people at the Customs and Border Patrol, would just tell you got to rip off the Band-Aid and you have to move forward. And so, it wasn't chaos. I mean, the fact of the matter is 325,000 people from foreign countries came into the United States yesterday, and 109 people were detained for further questioning. Most of those people were moved out. We've got a couple dozen more that remain, and I would suspect as long as they're not awful people, that they will move through before another half a day today. And perhaps some of these people should be detained further. And if they're folks that shouldn't be in this country, they're going to be detained. And so apologize for nothing here.
Okay, you don't think that anything, there was no decision, you didn't put out any of the rules in advance to some of these agencies. Why not?
No, Chuck, of course we were working with the agencies. We were working with the agencies for a long time, and so I'm not going to get into every little conversation that was had, but this was not an executive order that was simply signed from the White House and suddenly transferred to the Department of Homeland Security. They knew full well what was going on, and they conducted themselves yesterday perfectly pursuant to the order.
Well, one of the things in the order apparently is to include green card holders. And that is something that there has been a report that the Department of Homeland Security recommended that it not include green card holders. Why did the White House choose to overrule the Department of Homeland Security on that one?
We didn't overrule the Department of Homeland Security. As far as green card holders moving forward, it doesn't affect them. But here's the deal. If you're coming in and out of one of those 7 countries, by the way, identified by the Obama administration as the 7 most dangerous countries in the world in regard to harboring terrorists, and affirmed by Congress multiple times, then you're going to be subjected temporarily with more questioning until a better program is put in place over the next several months. This is something that 75–80% of Americans out there agree with. We don't want people that are traveling back and forth to one of these 7 countries that harbor terrorists to be traveling freely back and forth between the United States and those countries.
You just said something at the beginning of your answer, and it seemed like an aside. This order does not impact any green card holders from these 7 countries?
Well, of course it does. If you're traveling back and forth, you're going to be subjected to further screening. I mean, we are going to...
Wait, let me ask you this. You're going to do that? Are you going to do that to American citizens as well that travel in and out of these 7 countries?
I would suspect that if you're an American citizen traveling back and forth to Libya, you're likely to be subjected to further questioning when you come into an airport.
Now, why do you believe, let me ask you this, why are you confident that's constitutional? And I'll ask it this way, because green card holders, they go through extreme vetting to get the green card, number 1, but number 2, when they get that green card, they're entitled to all the protections.
I'm not suggesting, listen, wait a minute, Chuck, I'm not suggesting that.
I understand that, but are you, by having to put in an extra hurdle for a green card holder in order to get back into the country, how are you confident that doesn't violate their rights and that it doesn't end up making this order unconstitutional?
First of all, the order is not affecting green card holders moving forward, okay? That's number 1.
I'm confused by that. You keep saying going forward. You just said it did. I'm confused. You said it does. Green card holders
from those 7 countries. If you would just slow down for a second and listen, I could answer your question.
I understand that, but you've twice confused me, so I'm trying to understand the clarity.
It's because you don't stop talking, Chuck. I love you, but I mean, let me answer the question. If you are a person, this isn't in regard to the executive order. The executive order doesn't affect green card holders moving forward. I've said that. But what I'm suggesting to you is that Customs and Border Patrol, I would suspect, if they have a person that's traveling back and forth to Libya or Somalia or Yemen, I would suspect within their discretion they might ask a few more questions at JFK or some other airport when someone's coming back and forth within their discretionary authority as a Customs and Border Patrol agent. And what I'm saying is I would suspect that most Americans would agree that that might be a good thing to do. What I'm not suggesting to you is that that is in the order moving forward. I'm suggesting that within the discretion of the CBP, that those questions would likely be asked.
Okay, you say it doesn't affect green card holders moving forward, but you just said it does impact green card holders from those 7 countries. Those two things don't compute.
No, it computes, Chuck, because there's discretionary authority that a Customs and Border Patrol agent has when they suspect that someone is up to no good that's traveling back and forth to Libya or Yemen. And I'm not suggesting it's in the order. I'm suggesting that at every level in an airport, a Customs and Border Patrol agent has the authority to use their discretion to ask questions. That's all we're talking about. We're off on a tangent that has nothing to do with the executive order.
Well, let me ask about the executive order, because the countries chosen, and I know you say this is countries that were codified by Congress, chosen by the Obama administration, but here's what I'm confused about. When you look at those folks that have committed terrorist acts in this country, killed Americans, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, you've had more terrorists come from those 3 countries than any of the 7 that you have. In fact, in the case of Saudi Arabia, more have come from Saudi Arabia to kill Americans than the 7 countries combined. Why was Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and Pakistan and Egypt not included on this list if you are so concerned about this issue?
We are concerned about the issue, Chuck, and that's why we put these 7 countries initially into the executive order that were identified previously by Congress, by both the House and the Senate, and the Obama administration as being the 7 most watched countries in regard to harboring terrorists. But you bring up a good point. Perhaps other countries needed to be added to an executive order going forward, but in order to do this in a way that was expeditious, in a way that would pass muster quickly, we used the 7 countries that have already been codified and identified by both the Obama administration and the Congress. But you bring up a good point, and perhaps other countries need to be added. But this is all done for the protection of Americans, and waiting another 3 days and waiting another 3 weeks is something that we don't want to get wrong. President Trump is not willing to get this wrong, which is why he wants to move forward quickly and protect Americans.
And just to clear things up, the Trump organization has business ties in a couple of the countries that were not included, including Saudi Arabia. Did that have any impact on why Saudi Arabia was not included on the list?
Of course not, Chuck. Just like I said very clearly, the countries that were chosen in the executive order to protect Americans from terrorists were the countries that have already been identified by Congress and the Obama administration. That does not mean that other countries wouldn't be added later to a subsequent executive order. But again, what we're talking about, out of 325,000 people trying to find a proverbial needle in a haystack, was accomplished yesterday with a little over 100 people detained for further questioning from these countries. People are moving out of the system and moving forward. This obviously is going to be, I believe, a very smooth and effective operation for the safety of Americans across the country.
We'll move on to a couple of other things. There was an issue with, on Friday, the White House put out a statement on Holocaust Remembrance Day, and there wasn't a mention of Jews in the statement, of any of the victims of the Holocaust, that the majority of them were Jewish. Many of us thought it was an error. You guys were there early, and then it turns out it was not. John Podhoretz, a conservative columnist from Commentary Magazine, wrote this: "The final solution was aimed solely at the Jews. The Holocaust was about the Jews. There is no proud way to offer a remembrance of the Holocaust that does not reflect that simple, awful world historical fact. To universalize it, to quote all those who suffered, is to scrub the Holocaust of its meaning." Mr. Priebus, do you understand why many Jews were offended by the White House's decision not to note that the Holocaust was about eradicating the Jews?
Well, I recognize, in fact, obviously, that was what the Holocaust was about, and it's a horrible event, and are obviously a miserable time in history that we remember here at the White House, and certainly we'll never forget the Jewish people that suffered in World War II, and obviously still incredible wounds that remain in a time in history that was of great, incredible, horrific magnitude, and everyone's heart here is impacted by the memory of that terrible time. And so, for the record, that's the case. And
do you regret?
Certainly we don't mean
does the president
any
regret
ill will to anybody.
Do
I don't
you
know about regret. It's
the
just
statement?
no.
There's no regret, not acknowledging the pain that
we acknowledge it. We acknowledge the horrible time of the Holocaust and what it meant for history.
But
and
why
so,
whitewash Jews from that
I'm
statement?
not whitewashing anything, Chuck. I just told you that it was horrible. And, well, I'm telling you now that that's the way we feel about it, and it's a terrible time in history. And obviously, I think you know that President Trump has dear family members that are Jewish, and there was no harm or ill will or offense intended by any of that.
But you don't regret the statement. You don't regret the words that were chosen in the statement and the words
I don't regret
that were
the
not
words,
included.
Chuck. I'm trying to clear it up for you. I mean, everyone's suffering in the Holocaust, including obviously all of the Jewish people affected, and the miserable genocide that occurred is something that we consider to be extraordinarily sad and something that can never be forgotten, and something that if we could wipe it off of the history books, we could, but we can't. And it's terrible. I mean, I don't know what more to tell you.
All right. One last question. In an executive order, the president reorganized the National Security Council. And look, he can put anybody on it that he wants. What I'm curious about is why is the top intelligence official in this country and the top military official in this country not a full-time member of the National Security Council in the Trump administration?
They are. If you read the order, Chuck, they're invited to be attendees of the Security Council at any time that they want to. And if you read the paragraph, they are.
It said when it's necessary. Essentially, it looked like it was invite only. So you're saying every National Security Council meeting should include the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the director of national intelligence?
They're included as attendees anytime that they want to be included, Chuck, if you read the order.
So it is not correct then, because in the order it said it was sort of as needed.
That's not what, if you read the order, they're invited as attendees to the Security Council at any time.
All right, Reince Priebus, Chief of Staff for the President. We had a lot of other stuff to get to, but it's been a busy morning. Hopefully we'll see you again soon, sir.
You bet.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.